Hi, this is Don. This is the third video in the Riddle of the New Testament series, the Catholic epistles. I'm going to continue reading from The Making of the Bible by William Barclay, published in 1962. If I try to paraphrase this stuff, it just won't come out as good. It is significant that from AD 90 onwards, there came into the church what E.J. Goodspeed calls, quote, a shower of Christian letters, unquote. Consider the beginning of the Revelation. The Revelation begins with the letters to the seven churches. Why should a book begin with a collection of letters? Why should Pergamum read the letter to Ephesus, and Thyatira read the letter to Laodicea, and Philadelphia read the letter to Smyrna? The very way in which the Revelation begins shows that there must have been a precedent for issuing a collection of letters. It may well have been close to that time that Hebrews and James and Jude were written, as well as the letters of John. And most of these are not so much real letters as treatises cast in epistolary form. There must have been a good precedent for letter writing. It is certainly just shortly after this that Clement wrote his letter to Corinth. And it was not very long after this that Polycarp collected and issued the 7 letters of Ignatius. Not long after AD 90, there was a veritable epidemic of letter writing, and something must have given it its impetus. The deduction must be that it was just then that the letters of Paul were first collected and issued, and that this collection provided the precedent and the stimulus for this outbreak of letter writing. But how did this happen? Well, basically, these 3 guys that I mentioned, Goodspeed, Knox, and Mitten, are one of those 3. Let me see who it was. Okay, Goodspeed, Knox, and Mitten were the guys who came up with the theory from the letter to Philemon, as I explained in the second video. About the runaway slave Onesimus or Onesimus. So John Knox writes, the most anomalous the presence of Philemon in the collection appears, the more significant it must be. The more grounds which can be cited for its exclusion, the more important must have been the ground upon which it was actually included. The very fact that Philemon seems so out of place is evidence that the original editors had very good reason for including it. We are convinced that if we knew that reason, we should know something very important about the publication of the Pauline letters. I'm still looking for the discovery here. It had something to do with, oh, here it is. Onesimus would become very much Paul's right-hand man. So if we, about 50 years after Paul was writing about Philemon, Ignatius was on his way to Rome to fight with the beasts in the arena. As he goes, he writes to the church at Ephesus, and he speaks of their bishop. Quote, a man of indescribable charity and your bishop here on earth, unquote. And what is the bishop's name? It is Onesimus. That is to say that at the very time when the Pauline collection was made at Ephesus, the name of the bishop was Onesimus. Can Onesimus the bishop be one and the same as the runaway slave who had twined himself around the heart of Paul? Well, this is pure conjecture. They have the same name, but is it the same person? And it would seem like the answer is yes. Onesimus is. I don't think that's a real common name, and they're both from Ephesus, so there's a good chance that it's the same person. So what happened was, the theory is that Onesimus went around to all these churches that Paul had started up, and collected these letters that were forgotten scraps, in their file somewhere. And then he also included the letter to Philemon as probably at the head of all these letters, although it's not that way in the New Testament. He would be explaining how he came into these letters, and maybe possibly because of his work for the church in collecting these letters, he was made a bishop. I'm just surmising here. But that's basically the story of how these letters possibly came into prominence. And then, it became a fad where all these letters started appearing by different, by James and John and Revelation. So that's the story of the Catholic epistles.